first of all, welcome Phil and Roopa to Teen Street Australia. It's great to have you with us, and thanks for making the time. I believe it's 10 to 8 in the morning for you where you are. Yeah, so bright and early, and hopefully you've had your breakfast already. So we're going to hear a little bit more about the Logos. No, haven't had your breakfast yet? He's got the important things. He's had his breakfast, yeah. So you guys are on board the Logos Hope. We'll hear a little bit more about what the Logos Hope is for those listening in tonight who've never heard about the Logos Hope. You'll share a little bit about that. In fact, why don't you start there? Why don't you start with telling us a little bit about what is the Logos Hope for those of us who've never yet heard about it?
Yeah, sure. So thanks very much, everyone, for having us. We're excited. We were involved with OM way back when Teen Street was kind of being thought of. So it's exciting to see it continued, these many years later, and so many of you online. So thanks for the chance to share. So yeah, we're on board this ship, the Logos Hope, which is part of the family of OM ships that started way back in 1970. We're celebrating 50 years as an organization as part of OM. And so many of you may have heard of the Logos, or maybe the ship Doulos, or the Logos 2. And so the Logos Hope is the next ship in that series. If you think about it, we're kind of like a car ferry, 130 meters long. And on board we have 300 people living together. Due to the lockdown, we've reduced in numbers for various reasons. Usually we have somewhere around 400 people from about 65 different nationalities. So from all around the world, places like Mongolia, Montenegro, South Africa, Kenya. We have people from South America and all kinds of places. It's an exciting place to be. And we live in community to go to many different parts of the world and to share knowledge, help, and hope, with the ultimate goal to see vibrant communities of Jesus followers amongst the least reached. So it's a great opportunity for the crew on board. We all work to make the ship run. We connect with churches and local organizations in the ports that we visit, usually for about 2 to 4 weeks. We're in a port, partnering with churches, reaching out to communities, seeing people mobilize for God's work. We also have a bookstore on board. We're the largest floating book fair in the world. In fact, we're the only floating book fair in the world, but we have many titles of good Christian literature, Bibles. And just in the last 2 years in South America, where the ship was, just before we joined in this January, the ship has literally sold and distributed hundreds of thousands of Bibles. And, in terms of the ability to distribute Christian literature, we've raised up crew members and sent them out to many parts of the world. Many hundreds and thousands of people have started their missions journey on the ship and have now launched off. So it's an exciting place to be. Many young people, lots going on, and we've been here for about 6 months.
That's, thanks for sharing that. That's really awesome to hear just that little, brief summary of Logos Hope and what it does. And before I ask the next question, I should just sort of say to everyone as well, if you have any questions at all during this chat, if anything comes to mind while Phil and Roopa are talking, throw them in the chat. We'll get round to them after we've sort of interviewed them and heard a little bit about their story. Then we'll get round to going through your questions. So don't be shy, put your questions in the chat, and we'll look forward to going through them a little bit later on. So we've heard a bit about what the Logos Hope does. What's for both of you? What's your current role on board the Logos Hope?
Yeah, so we've, like I said, been on board 6 months. I joined we have a number of leaders on board who form a leadership team. I come on board in that leadership team as Director of Public Ministries, so overseeing the work that we do in the book fair. We run events on board where members of the public and people from churches in the community come, so I oversee that. We send teams out to partner with local organizations. And we have to, of course, send teams ahead of the ship before we arrive to prepare. We call that lineup. So all those different aspects that interact with the public, I oversee with a team of other leaders and teams that have as well. And Roopa also has joined, of course, with us, and we have our daughter Evangeline with us. She's 2.5. And Roopa looks after Eva as a mom on board, but she also oversees our ship's family groups and to make sure that there's kind of a care for everyone. Everyone gets put into a family with a a biological family that looks after them, and then the young crew members join that group of about, say, 15 people and meet together regularly to care for each other. So Roopa oversees the organization and coordination of that. And
Awesome.
so that's kind of our official roles.
Yeah. And so what inspired you to hop on board and spend however many years you've committed to doing life on board a ship, sailing around the world, doing those various roles?
So we met on the Doulos in 2005 and as single people. So we really loved being on board as a single and being involved in the different ministries, being involved in the jobs that we had. Phil worked in the engine room for 1 year back in the day, and I worked in the kitchen in the galley. It was just a couple of months, but then I moved to training the different groups of people that came on board. Sorry. And then Phil, his role moved to just going in advance and preparing for the ship to come into the port. So we just had like a really amazing time just seeing God just do amazing work through the ship's ministry. When we left, we had liked each other a lot, so we got married and we lived in Australia for like about 10 years. And then the opportunity came as one of the places that we could probably come back to was the ships. But while we were doing that, we were helping run a mission conference in Sydney called Reach Out. And every year when we interviewed all these missionaries, and after the weekend, we look at each other, we were like, do you think God is calling us to go? Do you think God is calling us to go? And every year we would be driving home and be like, okay, yeah, let's go. But we weren't sure where, and God hadn't opened the door for a place that we both felt really called to. So when the ship called us in 2018, we both instantly knew that this was the place to go to. One thing about the ship was the different cultural groups on the ship. We wanted to be able to come and help them work together and to love each other and to see Christ in all different cultures. On board, the average age is about 22, 23 years old. And we saw it as a great opportunity to come and just walk alongside people and just journey with them and talk with them and just hear what their life is about and what they want to be able to do in the future and how we could work with them on that. So that's what sort of inspired us, and we wanted to be able to care for community. It's just people, when you leave your country and you go somewhere else, you could just feel like you're the only one somewhere else. And we wanted to make sure that people are cared for while they're on the Logos Hope, and that's why we're here.
And I just love how in your story there's that that prompting, like that annual prompting almost of God saying like, "Hey, Phil and Roopa," and then that confirmation in that phone call, and that it obviously meant that you were also prepared to listen and to see that as God directing your lives, and then to take that step and say, "Okay, God, this is it. This is you saying we've got to go." And yes, that's really encouraging. And anyone listening, if God is prompting you, then hopefully this is an encouragement to you to listen to those promptings and to see in what ways is God encouraging you to take a next step. So just want to sort of shift gear a little bit. And so you're currently in Curacao. The ship has been in lockdown. No one's been allowed on or off for a number of weeks or even months now. So in a normal season, the ship, people come onto the ship and through various activities hear the gospel. Teams from the ship go off the ship and share the gospel on land. So how are you seeing God at work in this season when you can't do what the ship normally does?
Yeah. It's been such a strange time, and a strange time for everybody else. Not living on a ship, but for us, I guess, when we went into lockdown in March, we went into lockdown with about 330 people, and that was super different from what everybody else in the world was doing. So what we did was we took this time and we've been taking the time to train this crew and staff on board. When the ship is really busy and on a normal day, everybody has a job on board. We work for 8 hours in different departments. And alongside on a normal ministry day, half of those crew is going out and doing ministry with different churches. And then some people are off, so they're going to have their off day. So normally, over the season of time, people were not able to get a lot more training. They had specific training, but it would be spread out throughout a 2-year period. So we took this as a time when we got into lockdown. We decided, as well, the leadership decided that everybody needed to be trained for the next step. What the next step is, we're still a bit unsure, but we thought we have 330 people, let's get them trained. With everything that they would have done in 2 years, we're going to get it down in like 4 months, 5 months. So what we've done something called the Kairos course, which is really good because you're learning about Christ, you're learning about missions, and you're learning just how that is really connected. So everybody went through a 2-week Kairos course. Then there are different ministry and different equip sessions. One of them recently was learning how to be working in difficult places, like if they need development or relief, how do we do that? There's a mentoring course running, there's a discipleship course running, how to public speak. So different courses that are running and equipping and training the people on board on how we could better do that. Cute, nice ways to do it is that we have big windows in our dining room. When we were stuck in Jamaica for a long time, people would stick memory verses in heart shapes so that people who are working on the port would be able to read the memory verses. So we're still trying to do some, like maybe a tiny bit of outreach. Mainly we focused inside. We also, every group that joins the ship either joins in February or September. When the ship was super busy, it was really hard to make friends across the borders of all those different groups. These last couple of months, we've sort of combined doing every Friday night is the community night. So I ran a sisterhood event with all the women on board, and Phil ran a brotherhood event with all the men on board. And then another night we had a competition with sister and brotherhood to see who's better, and the woman won. So I mean, I'm just saying, but yeah, but it's sort of like we were building community, and now people have friends, a lot more tighter friends. So even though it's been not public ministry doing everything else, we've been able to do a lot more inside, which has been really good.
It sounds like this has been a real season of the people on board building up, deepening their faith, but also their almost developing their toolkit to be able to share about Jesus when this season finishes. That's so encouraging to hear. And we can certainly be praying that when this season finishes and you're once again allowed visitors and people off the ship, that God would bless this month's training. Yeah. So I've got a few more questions, and also a reminder, a few people have started popping questions into the chat, so keep doing that. Encourage you to keep doing that. We will get round to them. One of the barriers that exists to people following God's call the way that you have, and to take that step of faith, one of the barriers, the things that often stops people from doing that, is a fear of failure. What are your thoughts? What would you say to someone who has that fear?
Yeah, I mean, a really interesting question, which I've been thinking a lot about. And, we, particularly in Australian context, are very driven by results, very driven by what do I achieve in my life. Even around this lockdown, you hear a lot of conversations almost saying things like, if you haven't learned a new language and gained 5 different new skills while you've been locked in your house, you've somehow failed. And we're very uncomfortable with the concept of being and spending time with people and not necessarily achieving as much. And so when I think about sort of our part in coming to the ships and our interest in following God's call into missions and seeing the church's call to be part of what God is doing around the world, really struck by how when we try to measure that in a results-driven way, I think inevitably we're going to be overcome by the size of the task, by our inadequacy, and the way that we might just fail at the different outcomes we might want to achieve. Whereas primarily, I think God calls us, firstly, it's His work. And we see that so often in the ship's ministry and in other places, that people that we talk to, this is God's work that He is doing first and foremost, that He goes ahead of us, preparing hearts, preparing the ground that we come to. People constantly saying, that there's a sense that God has prepared them to just have a conversation with someone from the crew. And that the relational aspect, that relationship that we have with God, and the relationship we seek to build with other people is at the core of what we want to do in missions, in God's work around the world. And so, therefore, it's not so much about tasks that we're going to succeed at or fail at, because God ultimately is preparing those things for us and is working through us. And it's not an excuse to not prepare well or to work hard or to try our best at things. But I'm really convinced more and more that central to what God's call is a shaping that He makes in our lives as we serve Him in missions, and also that He works through the relationships that we have. And they can be messy and slow, and we feel inadequate, and yet relationships is about loving people. And as we're connected to God and love Him, and we know His love, then that, of course, connects to others. And more and more convinced that we can't measure it in the same way that we tend to do as success or failure of a task.
That's really encouraging, and love your God focus in that question, that in your answer to the question, that's where we should be looking. So hopefully that's been an encouragement to people to sort of think past that barrier. And so I've got one last question before we throw it to the questions in the chat. What sort of people would you like to see join the team on the Logos Hope? Who are you? What are you looking for in the people that you'd like to see come on board?
I'll take that question. We are looking for people who are willing to be reflectors of Christ. That's the first thing. People who are able to come on board and share Jesus, even if we're in lockdown still, even with the crew on board, to be able to walk with new friends and be able to share, to chat, read Bibles, pray, just spend time with God. We also need people who are willing to serve. We sort of, we come on board and we think, oh, I see there's, the galley in the galley, or which is a kitchen, or accommodation, which is like vacuuming the floor. Some people who come and they get those positions, they're like, oh, I'm worth nothing because I'm just vacuuming the carpet, or I'm just like scrubbing the pots. But we want people to see that wherever they're working, that they're serving God, they're serving the community. So we want people to come with the right attitude to be able to serve and to work hard. We also want people to be able to just come and I think be joyful. I think it's when you come on board and you look at all the wrong things. We live on a ship. We have rules that we have to follow, and we've had people just being like, why do we have like 101 rules for maritime purposes? We have them. You have to wear your shoes all the time on the ship. You have to wear your badge all the time on the ship. So we want people to come with a joyful attitude. With the rules, you'll be like, I'm following the rule, so I'm going to do it joyfully. So we're looking for people who are able to just come with some of these things. If you have a degree in something, sometimes the ship is able to place you where your degree is. So it's more practical. So if you're an engineer, if you're a marine officer, if you're a graphic designer, sometimes, or if you're a teacher, they always look for teachers, they look for doctors. But, if you're a maths teacher, like Phil, a maths high school teacher, you're probably not going to come and be a high school maths teacher on board. But being willing to serve in a different department, and being able to just work in a different role. So, I think just, I don't know, bubbly, excited, servant-hearted people.
There's great opportunities of just learning and growing, and life is pretty exciting on board. Things are happening. There's new people to meet, and so if you're open to new experiences, you're open to see how God works around the world, and just are curious about how other people work, how people work, how God is working in people's lives. And this is a great place to be. So many people start here, get an exposure to different parts of the world, different work that's happening, and get launched out. And so if you're just curious, can make some time, plan for that, and be a great place. You can be here for 3 months on the short term, 1 year, 2 years. It's just a really wonderful place. For us as young people, when we were in our early 20s, it really made a great impact, life-changing impact in our lives. And just want people who are open to that and want to serve God, serve other people, and see what the world is like.
Yeah, thanks for that. So, it's just so encouraging to hear the sort of the range of people that are welcome on board, but that above all, it's the heart that's willing to serve and to be shaped through the experience. Yeah. So I'm going to throw over to the questions I see in the group chat. How many countries have you travelled to?
Probably, in the last 6 months, not many. We've been sort of stuck in Jamaica for a while, but in our time with the ships together, I think you've been to a few more, 35 to 40, and somewhere in that realm. Yeah.
A lot.
We've been very, very fortunate, very privileged to do it.
Yeah.
Curacao has been a place for both of us.
Curacao is a new place, although we haven't actually been here because we haven't been off the ship, so it doesn't really count.
It doesn't count yet, right? Yeah. And someone asked, just to help them, to help us all understand the Logos Hope a little bit more, is it like the Mercy ship?
So the Mercy ships is very much a medical ship. They do amazing work. We have people on board who have worked on the Mercy ships. I think the emphasis is quite different. We are very centered around the literature. We have a deck that visitors come on board for the book fair and cafe and to engage with our crew members. So I guess that's events, and the ministry in terms of literature and engagement with the crew is the focus. Mercy ships, the focus is very much on medical, and they're in ports for much longer as well. They can be there for 9 months following up with people. So, and their people on board are very much kind of doctors, nurses, seafarers, qualified people is the majority. Our majority of people would be unqualified young people who are coming to serve and who've learned great things and gained great knowledge through that too.
A lot of people who came in today from their gap year between high school and university. We have a lot of crew and staff on board. Yeah.
And you mentioned teachers earlier, so are there kids on board as well?
Yeah.
We have a daughter here. She can come say hello. We have I think it's about 20 kids on board. This is Eva, Evangeline. Say hi, Eva.
Hi.
Hey, Eva.
And so she's 2.5. She's got about 4 kids in her play group, fun deck age group, and then so we have a school on board with a number of teachers. 20 kids are a beautiful part of the community. Parents, kids, make up an important part. The crew members love the kids. Yeah, it really makes the ship like a family, that we're a family of people from all around the world.
And Eva's best friends are all everybody else but mom and dad. So lunchtime she'll have lunch with us, and then she goes sits by a table that has people our age or younger, but they're like Mexican, French, American, from the UK. Then she runs across to visit all her smaller friends. But her best friends are not us, so it's okay.
A multicultural upbringing by the sounds of things.
It is a great place for kids, it really is.
So there was a question, what is life like on the Logos? What's something that you enjoy, and what's something that you find challenging?
Life is really contained on the ship. So we're originally from Epping in New South Wales in Sydney. So that's, when you have to go to the grocery, when you have to do everything, you get in a car and you go somewhere. But on board, if you need to go to the bank, you go up one level. If you need to go to the ship, like a shop area, which is like a tiny shop that provides chocolate every couple of months, you go 2 levels up. your dining room is like one level up. So everything is a bit contained. Life on board means that breakfast starts at 7 o'clock. There's set times for meals, because there's set routines where everybody has to get into their workplace or their training, depending on what they're doing. So 7 o'clock is breakfast. 8 o'clock tends to be like either your Bible study group or like a devotion time that we may have. Like we have director's devotion on a Monday morning. Um, and then you work from 9 to 12. 12 is lunchtime. You start work at 1 again. We finish at 5. Dinner is at 5:30, and then until 6:30. Thursday night, all across OM, which is this organization that we belong to. There's prayer nights on Thursday nights, so we also do prayer nights on Thursday nights. And every other night, you either have different ministry opportunities or you have free nights where you're just hanging out with your friends, watching movies, or just playing games, or just chatting and stuff like that. So that's what a whole day looks like when we're on board. The kids go to school from 9 to 3. Eva's age, our daughter, she goes from 9 to 12. Yeah, so there's stuff like that. What's been something that we really enjoy? We've really enjoyed being part of the community. I think somebody said to us, don't you take like rest times? And we're like, oh, yeah, yeah. When we're sleeping, we are resting. And then we take pancake morning on a Saturday. But we just love opening our cabin and having groups of people come in. On a Sunday after church, we have something called open cabin, where married couples are able to open a cabin for everyone. We've had 35 people in our cabin, which is a lot. So yeah.
Yeah. I mean, of course, challenges, it is a close-knit community. I mean, this time particularly where you can't get off, your life is here and you feel a bit contained and confined. But, also when you do bring people from different backgrounds and cultures together, of course, there's going to be conflict and ways that you need to work with people. So that can be a challenge. And, lots of ups and downs as well in terms of, kind of like the question we were saying before, are we the right people for the role? There's a lot of responsibility. Do I feel like I'm up to the task? Did I make the right decision? Did I fail at something? So yeah, all those kind of feelings come through as well, but we're grateful for this opportunity. Overwhelmingly, we feel really fortunate and really blessed that God has given us this chance again to be on board. Yeah.
One of the other questions is, like you mentioned lockdown just now. So, and you mentioned before that there's been a big emphasis on training. Have you been able to reach out and minister in some ways during lockdown?
So yeah, I mean, there's an interesting time, of course, that everyone has jumped onto, Microsoft Teams and Zoom and, being able to connect. So we did have quite a stable internet connection, depends on the port that we're in, but digital means of kind of sharing prayer events, sharing different types of kind of produced videos on board that we were able to send around and share with different groups of people, connecting with supporters and partners of OM in different parts of the world as well, to encourage them and to tell them about what's been happening. And, actually this time, interestingly, has also allowed crew members to connect much more with their home churches. Because churches have gone to Zoom, we've joined our church services at home because I was able to share one. So we've been able to join in. And so other people have also done that. And has allowed us actually to take some more time to connect with people back home, including some people connecting with their non-Christian family and friends, being able to talk about their own experience. And so, yeah, there has been actually some interesting opportunities despite the challenges. And I think we're all around the world are discovering that things are possible, even if they look a bit difficult.
Here's a practical question. So you're on the ship right now. This might be a bit hard. Is a tour possible, or is there otherwise sort of a website that you might be able to direct us to?
I'll show you our cabin. It might be a bit messy, but let's see how we go. So this is our cabin. Sorry about the movement. So this is our cabin. It's not too small. We were pleasantly surprised. Apologies. We have a little kitchenette. The bed is a couch. That's Roopa sitting there with Eva, and that's going on. And then I'll show you the little hallway. I'm not sure if it will keep. This is our hallway. Not very exciting, but you can kind of tell. This is deck 5 forward, starboard side. There you go. And there's lots of cabins, and then I might drop out of Wi-Fi range if I go too far. And then Eva has a little cabin as well, so a little room. So we try to make it as homey as possible. If you go online to the Logos, if you search Logos Hope, you can go in and see some of the photos of what's been happening and the different areas of the ship to get a sense of what it looks like, where people live, those kind of things as well.
I've got some more questions. One is, here's a good question, because you guys have been through this transition. Is it hard to transition back to life on land once you've spent life on the Logos Hope? Or for you guys, it was the doulos you spent time on and then transitioned back to life on land?
It is hard when you're living in really tight community with 350 different people with different personalities and from 60 different nations represented. You form really close friends. So on board, you welcome people every 6 months, and you're super happy that they're coming to join your bigger group. You also say goodbye every 6 months or so. So there's also a part where you're having to say goodbye to friends that you've made from around the world. When we left, we did it really, we moved to Australia. For me, it was really difficult leaving a place where I really didn't stand out. And maybe I stood out because I was a loud Caribbean person. But and then being in a really tight community. But when I moved to Australia, it was a bit different. I think it was just I married Phil, and if you've seen the Big Fat Greek Wedding, have you seen the Big Fat Greek Wedding? You need to watch that movie. That's us. So for me, it was a bit difficult transitioning to being in Epping, where there wasn't a lot of tight community stuff. Nobody was knocking at my front door just for a cup of tea or just to see if they could spend time. I had to make appointments to catch up with somebody, which is, I've learned in 10 years in Australia that's just normal and it's good. So transition could be hard. But, the wealth of experience and friends and love that you received on time on board, when you go home, you're still able to tap into friends around the world who are going through what you're going through and able to still be connecting and walking through with them in life. We still have friends who were on the first ship with us that we still communicate with 10 years later. And we still look back on the old days and then we talk to them about the new days. But yeah, it is hard, but I would do it again and again. Yeah, I probably would do it again. Yeah.
Well, you're doing it again now. So. Yeah. So we probably have to wrap up there because 10:25 I think is the scheduled finish time. Now, I'm happy to sort of stay on, and there's a few more questions we haven't got round to. Do you still have a little bit more time?
Yeah.
Okay, so people are welcome to stay on. I will wrap it up here, as anyone who has to leave will leave. Now, if anyone, having heard Phil and Roopa, thinks, hey, I'd really like to go on the Logos Hope and or at least to explore what it's like, I want to talk sort of further with someone. If you write your name in the chat session, and maybe like, I'm interested in your name, then post Teen Street, we can follow up with you. But if you write your name in the chat session, then we'll be able to sort of follow up with you and know to follow up with you. Alternatively, what was the website again?
So if you go to omships.org, or if you just search Logos Hope in Google, you'll be able to find the website. So there's lots of resources, and we'd be very happy if anyone, contacted OM, flick their email or questions onto us. We'd be more than happy to answer and talk a bit with you about things. We'd be more than happy to do that. We actually, today, the only other Australian girl is leaving So we will be the only Australian family. I'll be the represent. Rupert identifies as Trinidadian as well, so I'll be the one flying the Australian flag. So with Eva. So we'd love to have a few more Aussies. Great heritage with the ship's ministry. So we're just down a bit. We haven't been in that part of the world for a while, but we'd love to see some more Aussies join and come. You can hang out in our cabin and we can, do all the Aussie stuff.
I make Anzac cookies.
A Caribbean person making Anzac cookies. Fantastic. Well, let me pray, and then whoever needs to leave can, and whoever would like to stay and chat some more is welcome to stay and chat. And Father, we thank you for the work of the Logos Hope and how you've used that to bring knowledge, help, and hope, the word of yourself to so many people, and how you've also used that to transform the lives of so many crew members, people who've served on board. You've used it to shape them. We thank you for the faithfulness of Phil and Roopa to follow your prompting, to follow that, almost that annual prompting, and then that phone call to say, can you please come on board? And Lord, anyone tonight listening who's felt that prompting from you, Lord, I pray give them the courage and the faith to take that step, and to not worry about a fear of failure, Lord, but to be obedient to you. And so, Lord, we pray that you would give them the strength to do that. And so, Lord, we continue to pray for your blessing over the work of the Logos Hope. Thank you for all the training that they've been able to do. And we pray indeed that when the doors open again, that training would be used by you in such a great way to see so many people hear about the wonderful message of salvation and commit their lives to you, so that you would be honoured, praised and glorified amongst all nations, right to the ends of the earth. This all we pray in Jesus' name. Amen.
Thank you very much, everyone, for those who come on. We will stay, but if you need to go. But thank you so much. Maybe some of you we can see on the Logos Hope at some point.
I might just go back then, and sort of as people can be leaving, and just cover some of the questions we didn't get to. Here's one. Is there a way you teach music and incorporate music on the ships? Lessons, worship, times to play?
Yeah, I mean, that's an important part of our community activity is corporate worship, singing together, praying together. And so there's many opportunities to play music. We've got some very, very talented musicians on board who come and use their talents to do that. But also we have opportunities for some people learn instruments while they're on board and start that journey as well. And we do have opportunities that some of the kids learn from others. There's things called passion groups on board, which are groups of people who get together to serve one another, but also that can be used in events. So some of the passion groups involve dance, some of the passion groups involve music, things like string quartet, or a drumming group, like a Latin drumming group exists. So there's all kinds of ways that music is used to connect with people and also encourage the ship's community and build the community here as well. So yeah, it's really a great part, and you appreciate the cultures and the importance of music to each different cultural group and how they use that as well.
We have like a cappella group, and so especially for Easter, they were able to do they were singing for like part of the drama procession that we did for Easter, but they also perform for different programs that we have on board. Out of the a cappella group, we also have a music coordinator on board, and him and alongside with several other people, they help people, like they do music training, like voice training, and different things like that. So yeah, we do have people who are doing different things around. Yeah.
Cool. Now we coming back to transitions, we spoke before about your transition from the ship back to Australia, or not back in your case, Roopa. What was it like transitioning back onto the ship this time round?
Well, I could start. I'll start, and Phil could, finish up nicely. For us, it was different because we were married and we have a child. So, yeah, it was different coming on board as a family rather than as singles. Um, so for me, I had to learn that I'm a wife and a mom on board, and not just like a single person to just do every single thing that I would like to do. So I think the transition back on board was a learning process. It was also we the first port that we came into was Trinidad, which is my home country. So yeah, we got really quickly jumped into ministry. The ship was still open every day. We were getting several thousand people visiting the ship in port in Trinidad, alongside with all my family that lives here. So yeah, it was just um, recognizing that hey, we're going to be on board. um, we're not single, we're married, we have a kid. How are we going to find balance between work and community and family time? Because my mother-in-law checks up on me regularly, making sure that I'm resting and eating, and making sure that everybody's okay in the family. So her baby son. So yeah, it's been a bit of a transition in terms of that. But what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, we just came, I think, open to the fact it's different. The singles can throw themselves in much more, and so yeah, just balancing that, like Rupa says, and making sure that we are spending time as a family, and Rupa and I are investing in our marriage and making sure that that's strong and healthy, because that's also a great ministry that we have, showing people on board what it is to have a marriage that's strong and Christ centered, a family that we really value and care for one another. And also, there are people who meet special people on board that, that's how what happened with us. And, many of them in their early and mid 20s are in a stage of life where, of course, you're thinking about marriage and life partners and what that might mean for your future. And actually, people with similar passions and heart for the Lord are here together. So we're able to walk with people in that way as well, which is great. And we are really privileged to do that. So, yeah, it has been very positive transition, but we do need to watch out that we use our time well and wisely as well.
Yeah, thanks for that. So this is a quick question. How long does the ship usually stay in a port?
So 2 to 3 weeks would be the average length. Yeah.
And coupled with that question, so that was part A. Part B is, what type of events are there normally, does the ship normally host for the non-Christian communities, the ports that you've been?
Yeah, so I mean, again, that's a great question. It's there is a wide variety. I mean, if there's a particular group in different ports, we might cater to that. So, I mean, we've had groups ranging from a group of Buddhist monks who might come on board to groups of people from a needy community in the city, to a particular ministry that's partnering with men or workers or whatever who come on board who aren't Christians, and an evangelistic event happens. We also have some other more sort of formal events over the last 2 to 4 years. We've had Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe as a big dramatic production on board that's been running regularly. And that has been a great thing, of course, to share the gospel through the story of LWW, as we call it, on board. And that has had a massive impact in people. So, people by the thousands have seen that throughout South America and the Caribbean, and have an opportunity to respond to the gospel, connect with crew members. So that's a really exciting part as well of what we do. And so those are kind of formal events, and then informal things happen on our Hope Experience deck, through our book fair workers and through the people in the cafe. All kinds of small events and little contacts are happening in many different times. But yeah, those are some of the things that we run on board.
There's like a very wide range of activities to suit any skill set, really. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. You have a passion that you have a heart for. You're willing to use it and develop it. There are opportunities on board to use that in contact with people onshore, maybe on board in events. Yeah, really great chance to sort of try new things. I mean, I discovered that I really have a heart to speak with people and communicate from the front while I was on the ship before. I was not a big speech guy in school or anything, but having opportunities on the ship, that's something I really love to do and have grown and had great opportunities to do and still have as well. So, yeah.
Here's another question kind of related to transition. So you've been on the ship now, this is your second time. So do you have a house here in Australia? Do you have to sell it? Like, what's it like every time when you go onto the ship?
I'll take this. Yeah, we did it a bit differently from our friends back in Australia. When we first moved to Australia, we lived with Phil's parents for some time while Phil was studying, and then he became a maths high school teacher. And what we end up doing, because we wanted to be able to care for Phil's parents in a way too. Maybe that's my Indian Caribbean side, maybe. But we invested into Phil's parents' property, so we co-own the property that they have, and we've been really blessed that we haven't owned. We didn't have to decide about selling our property. We have some good friends from our church who's renting the front side of the house, and Phil's parents also still live in the back of the house in their area. So yeah, we've been really blessed that we didn't have to do that. We have friends who were on board who had to sell their property. Recently, they had to quickly go home for some medical issues, and it was it's a prayer point that we constantly pray for them because they don't have a home to go home to. So yeah, we haven't sold our property. It's still there.
And we were very deliberate actually about decisions that we made about, mortgage in themselves are not bad, but we were really conscious of how large a mortgage do we want to have. If we were to go overseas again, how would we manage that? So just making small decisions about their career and depending on how much we earn, but also thinking, how could we do this? Believing that having a place to go back to is important and wanting a home, but making that manageable, that wouldn't somehow stop us from serving in a supported role like we are now, that we're partnering with people and asking for financial support and people generously supporting us, which is wonderful. And so in that we've been really fortunate to be able to rent out to people and continue that.
Which is another sign of God's blessing, and you took that step of faith and God his provision in that as you take that step. Another question of a practical nature. If you're qualified in teaching or something else, engineering or the captain, let's say, do you get paid to go on the ship or do you still have to raise support?
Yeah, so everyone is supported. The captain is a supported role. He has friends and family back home who are, supporting him from his home church, as well as teachers, as well as engineers, everybody, actually. So that's the same for us as well. And so, look, it's a daunting task at times. I think that, God challenges us at different phases. I remember when I raised support as a single guy in my early 20s and looked at the amount I had to raise, I was like, whoa, that's a lot, but God generously provided that through his people, and he really does. When God has given you a vision and can share with others and they want to join in that work with you. And then when we were doing it as a couple, I saw the amount that we needed to raise and I was like, whoa. But at the same time, again, my fundamentally believe there's work that can happen in God's mission where people can work in a job and earn money, and that's great and important. People can get access to different countries, but there is a great need also for people to be supported by church and friends and family. And I strongly believe there's enough money out there and people are generous and want to see what God is doing and want to join in that work. And so we've been excited to see how God raises people up, and everyone on board, has seen that, and God does provide for us as a ship's community and also individually as well.
Well, we've come to the end of the questions that have been posted in the chat. I don't know if there's any more questions out there from the people that are still in the call. And if there aren't any more questions, or if anyone still wants to put their name in, we do have a question about how much do you have to raise, and maybe give it for a single person, if you know the number off the top of your head.
Yeah, somewhere around. I mean, I can speak for when I was there, and it does depend. I mean, we as an organization adjust based on where you come from. Obviously, someone from the Philippines or Mexico doesn't have to raise as much as someone from Germany or Australia, just purely out of circumstance. But it's somewhere in the realm of about 12 to 1,500 Australian dollars a month. Would be per month, yeah. So, give or take a little bit, current calculations and costs of various different things is all included in that. But so it's very doable. Actually, it's not something, and the process of raising support actually involves people so much. That's the exciting thing, that it actually is a daunting and yet exciting. I have relationships with friends that started because they wanted to support me, and it's continued on as great friendships. It's really exciting thing. Yeah.
Well, last chance for questions from people.
Maybe if anyone else is thinking of maybe the ship is possibly an opportunity to come to. We probably want to just encourage you, like, even if you're in high school maybe, or even if you're in uni, we would encourage you to take maybe like a gap year if you can, because this is the time to start thinking of it. I think if you wait until you finish high school and then what next, by then you're going to be like, oh my gosh, I need to become a millionaire, and then I need to marry and have 10 kids, and then you totally forget, the ship. And I think, like, as you're processing and thinking what next, all these different missionaries that are going to be interviewed in this time at Teen Street, here's your opportunity to see where would I be able to be involved and be able to grow and stuff like that. So if you're in high school, I would just say start thinking now. I like planning people's lives, so maybe, I don't know if we could, maybe it'll be too much to connect, but maybe connect with OM Australia. They're really good at planning people's lives too. So yeah, just be able to say to them, hey, I'm thinking of the ships. I know that I'm only in year 10 or something, or year 11, but how could I do it? And they will help you put steps in place so that when you finish high school and taking a gap year or, a year or two, that's your chance to be preparing to come on board. Yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely. Plan for it. We know someone, one of my former students, actually, when I was teaching, she came on the ship when she was 8, decided that, she wanted to do it. And so when she finished school, she joined the Logos Hope and spent 2 years on board. It is, and a sort of a sense of plan. And, in the scheme of things, a year or two is really not that long. You guys mostly are very young, so, you can afford to take it. But it's not only about affording it. It's actually the richness of what God will show you and teach you, and the trajectory of your life can be altered, significantly. So really think about what that might be, whether that's the ships or going to South Africa training or doing something in Australia, whatever that might be. It's well worth the investment that you might make for the rest of your life. It really does have a kind of change in your mindset and see God working in you and through you.
Well, thanks again, guys. So I'm going to call it a night there. So people do need to get some sleep before Teen Street Day 3. So thanks, everyone, for attending, for staying till the end, and for all your questions. And, sleep well, and look forward to seeing you tomorrow at Teen Street.
Thanks, everyone. Great to connect. Hope to see you here. See you later. Bye-bye.